Excellent. Well, welcome to Marta Skassa, Senior Product Manager at Zalando, with also a focus on machine learning, which we're going to talk about during this session. Marta, welcome to our Prod MBA Product Leadership Series.
Hi, nice to be here.
Thanks for joining. I think first question that I'm always asking, that always comes up with a different answer is, what do you think makes an effective product leader?
Yeah, I think this is a very good and complex question. I think there are a couple of things that come to my mind immediately. I think one of the most important things is for sure empathy to the customer, with the customer. So I think a good product leader has to always be really interested in the customers, and it doesn't stop at any point, any level. You need to be interested and curious about them. Ideally also enjoy talking to them and have some time to speak with your customers, maybe not on a daily basis, but regularly. So I think this empathy always pays off. Second thing connected to that, I would say it's passion. So I think as a product leader, you should have this passion for the product you are working on. Ideally, to live and breathe the product, know every detail, maybe not so much at some point, but at least feel the passion and also share it then with your team. So these are two things I find really important. Another thing I would say, for sure, you have to be able to prioritize. I think no surprise here, and be able to say no. But I think on top of that, what is crucial for the product leader is also be able to be clear about the reasons of your decisions. So if you say no to something, why? Be crisp, be clear, be transparent about it. If you prioritize one thing over the other, make a decision, make it clear why this decision has been made. I think it also helps the team, helps the stakeholders, and so on and so forth. And maybe the last point here, I would say, very important trait as well would be adaptability. So I think product leaders have to be flexible. You have to know when to pivot, know when to maybe change your mind. I think, product managers, I think of product managers maybe as very smart people. I think we're very smart people. And I think one of the characteristics of smart people is also that smart people have a lot of doubts, because smart people, you hear things from different people, you think about them, you have to consider a lot of viewpoints, and then you have to adapt to what you hear. But also, I would say at some point you need to make a decision. So adapt, make a decision, and be clear about why this decision has been made.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It touches upon definitely a couple of themes that we've seen in this series around, sort of clarity, simplifying things. I really like the, yes, passion is important, but also I think curiosity. I don't think you need, you don't need to be passionate in the sort of, like Trump rally, people super excited about something, but I like, like really, really into it. I like that, where it's curiosity, where you're sort of thinking about the customer all the time and sort of trying to look at things in different ways.
Yes, yes. I think this passion and eagerness to learn new things, to adapt, to learn, and constantly grow as a human, also as a person.
Yeah, I love the way that you described sort of that maybe it's a hit to the ego boost, but sort of being smart, where it's not.
Yes.
I agree completely. It's because it's not just about intelligence. It's things like emotional intelligence. It is willing to hold a position and then change it and then adapt based on new information as well. Because I've seen, for example, you see actually very intelligent people in tech who I think are too confident with their opinions, maybe, and therefore they fail to adapt at times.
Yes, but I would still say that intelligent people there's always doubt. Like when you think about intelligent people, yes, they have their convictions and they know their stuff, but to me, intelligent people are also very open to listen and to hear from other people and able to change their mind if they think that's the right thing.
Yeah, sort of like interrogating their position in a way. Interesting. On that, what do you feel are, one thing I think about with product, there are a lot of misconceptions and, misinterpretations of maybe what it really means to do product, what it means to be a product leader. What do you think is maybe one undervalued trait?
Well, I think what is super important, and I haven't seen this enough, I would say, in my leaders, in my past experience. And this is also interesting because it's super obvious thing, but again, I haven't seen this enough, is feedback. So I think as a successful, good product leader and leader in general, I think you need to give feedback to people regularly, almost constantly. This feedback should be balanced, but it should come, and it should come for you. And of course, people can ask you for feedback, but you as a lead should also be very mindful about bringing this feedback to people, for positive, negative. And I really cannot, I could think of so many times when I had to, my personally ask my leads, my leaders, people I was working on, can you give me some feedback? Please, 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 over and over again. And it's such, I don't know, it's such an obvious thing. Like when I think, okay, feedback, everyone is talking, feedback, 360 degrees feedback, blah, blah, blah. But I don't see this happening enough. And especially I feel like in big companies, so the company I work for, we have those processes for feedback. So feedback round happens twice a year. We collect feedback and then we talk. But I think this should happen so much more often, ideally on every 101. I would expect a product lead to give feedback about many things, different things, performance, product skills, whatever it is, to the people they work with. So I'm not sure if it's undervalued, but I don't see happening this.
Well, I think it is undervalued if it doesn't happen. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's also, any company that says they run some sort of lean, agile in the true sense process, you're bringing in feedback constantly to your product process. So it doesn't make sense to also not do that with yourself and with your team. It's sort of part of being effective. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, same goes for product. If you have feedback, give it now. Don't wait until, I don't know, the next demo or whatever ceremony you have. Just ping the people you are working with, tell them in person, not in person, whatever works, but do it. Whatever comes, like when something comes to your mind, don't shy away from that.
Yeah. I mean, on that, one thing that I feel is many teams don't offer honest feedback because there's not you need the foundation of a good culture there, right? You need sort of psychological safety. You need people to know that if you give them feedback, it's not in an aggressive way. It's not threatening their job or anything. What do you do specifically with your teams to try and create that, safe environment?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, yes, a lot of people, I just don't know how to do it. They don't want to, offend, hurt other people's emotions. So they'd rather either stick to only positive feedback or something like super generic, or don't do it at all, or wait until someone asks for it. So I think as a lead, as a product lead, you should be lead by example, basically. So do it in person, but also especially praise within the big group, give kudos to people so they feel appreciated. And also, I think what is super important is to, well, it sounds maybe, I don't really like the way of like calling this like celebrate the failures, but really like at least talking about failures and being open and saying, yes, these are good things. And when you work in product, you will fail, and it's good. If you never fail something, it's definitely off. So I think as a product lead, you should also celebrate this and talk super openly and honestly about the failures and lead by example. So really spend some time with people individually and also in groups with retros or with whatever else works for your team to just focus on that. And I think with time, people will also observe and learn and adapt and understand this is normal. This is, this should bring some positive results and help everyone else in the room.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. Yeah, and also it's there's culture is something that I find very frustrating because you get a lot of companies that state we're like open-minded and we're agile, blah blah blah, and then when it comes down to it, you see that leadership just does the opposite of everything they say. And I think it's such a good simple lesson, just like lead by example. That's the one thing that will probably knock everything else into place and will have a big impact on it.
Yeah, I think if you just say, yeah, you have to give feedback, and then to your team, to your stakeholders, and then you never do it yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
One thing I've seen in the past is, you say CEO or whoever's most senior will stress feedback, and then they'll be the one that cancels the one-on-ones, and it completely undermines the whole process. Anyway.
Yes.
I would love to dive into another topic now around, what are, so sorry, to give a bit of context, like I think there are really unique challenges around product management within machine learning and AI. But also maybe more specifically, I think for example, like how do you find, maybe we start simple. What do you feel are the unique challenges of managing product within, let's say, like a context of AI and machine learning?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. One thing is, of course, as a product manager working with machine learning topics or products, you need to have some understanding of how those things work, so to say. So I think there is some knowledge you need to gain either by, you don't need to be a data scientist. I'm not a data scientist myself, but some knowledge you need to gain through either online courses or being mentored by data scientists, or whatever works for you, but you need to probably make this effort. It's not the same as software engineering, so you need to learn. So that would be the first thing. The second thing, specifically to the product development process with machine learning, is that what I've learned also the hard way is that it takes time and you cannot take things for granted. Developing a new algorithm will take time. There are a lot of steps that need to happen before you have a working algorithm, from, first, of course, understanding the space, and then developing the prototypes, and then understanding what works, and then finally A/B testing. And then you have to be ready and accept the fact that, first of all, this all already takes time. There's a lot of uncertainty. And especially in the very beginning, when you start with something completely new, it might not work. So you cannot really expect, okay, we work 3 sprints on this new algorithm, bam, bam, bam. After 3 sprints, we have a working product that, I don't know, increases our click-through rate by 2%. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like this. Oftentimes, algorithms bring results that we don't really understand. We see weird things going on. We also see maybe surprising results in the A/B tests, and then we need to dive deeper, and we need to look into, take a step back and maybe start again. So it takes, I would say for sure, it takes more iterations to work on something with like machine learning related. I think as well, like the product development process, when I think about like agile and working, in sprints, that often proves quite challenging. Like currently I work in a setup where data scientists are a separate team from the software engineers, and it's working quite well. I also work in a setup when we were the same team, so software engineers with data scientists trying to work in sprints, 2-week sprints, for example. It was challenging at times, especially in the beginning of such projects, because of this time that you need to do the research as a data scientist, develop the prototype. You maybe cannot deliver anything, tangible within the 1-week sprint that you can show on the demo. And this can be frustrations and misunderstandings, especially if there are people maybe in the room who are not so familiar with how machine learning works. So I think there is you have to balance it quite well. And I think it's super helpful to have someone experienced on your team. So for example, a data science lead, that's the case for me. I have my counterpart for the data science. We are working together. And this is the person I would usually turn to talk, because I'm not an expert on data science, and I don't think that's my job to be. I have a basic high-level understanding of the concepts and so on, but it's great to have a person that has more experience and you can talk to about the decisions you are supposed to make. But all that being said, I don't want to sound it like daunting. It's really exciting, and the things you can achieve, the results after you put some effort in it, can be really mind-blowing.
Yeah. No, it's really, it's never, not an area I've worked in, but I find it very, I mean, obviously it's sort of inherently interesting. How, sorry, the reason I was asking confusing questions earlier was I was trying to phrase like, how do you find the, ultimately you're working on this sort of very specific area within a much larger, like strategic framework, right? As Zalando, this, massive e-commerce platform. How do you find, or what do you feel are the prerequisites for you to do your job properly within such a large strategic framework? Like, how do you know what to work on? How do you feel you can influence strategy, if at all? As you just mentioned, like, you working with the data scientists to define maybe what is even possible.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sort of manage that, where you as Marta and your team fit within this larger jigsaw, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I think what works quite well with Zalando in terms of product management, we are, I would say, quite a mature company at this point.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of processes in place
Mm-hmm.
that help us organize our work and understand the priorities. So we adopted the approach of working backwards. So we work with press releases, something that you might know from the Amazon approach.
Mm-hmm.
So we always try to think backwards and plan backwards in terms of product development. We also have
Sorry, just on
in
that,
place.
sorry to interrupt, but that's actually, I think, for those that haven't heard of this approach, do you mind just expanding on it? I think
Sure.
it's really
Yeah. So a press release is a document that you work on before you release a product. And like the first part of this document is quite short, and you basically describe the product as if you would describe it to your future customers. So imagine there is a press release in the media and you just released this new amazing shiny product. How would you describe it? How does it help the customers? What does it do? Of course, we never publish it anywhere, but it's for you to also, be able to tell this story. Why did you build this product? What is so amazing, so good? How does it help the customers? In what ways? What makes it? Basically, why did you decide to do it in the first place? The second part of this document, and it's usually much more lengthy, is the so-called FAQ, so frequently asked questions. And these are questions, for example, who is your customer? So some data about the customer, your focus customer. What customer problem are you focusing on? Where is the research? What is the research based? Like, what did you base your research on? How do you know this is actually a customer problem? And so on and so forth. The FAQ can be quite long, but having all this document before actually start building anything with as much detail as you can, also maybe use some visuals, that's helpful, can help you to make a decision whether, and the stakeholders and whoever has to make a decision whether to continue with this. It really helps because there is enough amount of detail. Everything is written down. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's not a pitch.
Yeah.
It's something quite thorough. Usually it takes quite a lot of time to write this, but it really helps you to steer you and your team in the right direction. Of course, how we do it at Zalando, we would write those documents, and then there is a meeting with senior management where we go through this document, questions are asked, and you probably have to reiterate on some points, and then we get a green light to move forward.
Understood. Yeah, no, I love the approach because it's what we try and do with, individual experiments, right? It's just, there needs to be some sort of obstacle between defining like, what are we doing and why, and like, does it really make sense before just simply jumping in and doing it? And I think without that, a gateway in a way. And I think without that, it's too easy, particularly when you go down a level and we get more granular on, let's say, sprint, too easy just to throw things in to fill time rather than say, like, does this really tie in with one very specific objective?
Yes, it definitely helps you to really reflect and dive quite deep into the why and the what of building the product. The how is usually not a part of this document, like how do you actually go about building this solution. Yeah. But even at sometimes there's like already like the scoping part included. So milestone 1 would be this, we do this in milestone 1, milestone 2 is something else, and the scope is already present in this document.
Yeah. And I mean,
And second, just one more thing, maybe one other thing that I want to mention that really helps me is also we have at Zalando a product development process that is now quite well, it's very well defined at this point. There are 4 stages of product development, and it's not surprising, I would say, what are those stages, but I think it's great that we have that something that is there for the whole company to think about product development the same way. First part would be discover, so product discovery, discover your problem, define the solution to this problem, define the problem, design the solutions to the problem, test them, and finally the 4th stage would be the delivery part, so deliver, and we call it 4Ds.
Yeah, that's nice as well, because I think it's also, I think the challenge is the frameworks. Like, how do you have something that guides decision making without restricting it in a way? You know, you can't say, for example, that every team does 2-week sprints and manages everything in this very specific way, but you can have these principles, these steps, as you said. No, it sounds really interesting, the process. Let's talk about, you know, unfortunately, it is rare that we find like effective female product leaders in the world, unfortunately. And we talked about this, you know, before we're recording. You know, one thing that I find frustrating in a way with, you know, my students is that it's a challenge I find with let's say female product leaders or aspiring product leaders in our case, to encourage them to, let's say, step up at times. You know, I find many situations where it's, you know, say, hey, does anyone want to do a talk? Or, you know, you're doing outreach, let's say, to customers, that, you know, men confidently stride in and just step up to the plate, let's say, in a way. What advice would you give to aspiring product leaders to, you know, maybe build confidence, or to, yeah, I suppose build confidence broadly? Like, what specific maybe worked for you in the past? Maybe as a character trait, like, what, you know, what do you feel is at the root of that for you?
Yeah, I think here I would say a couple of things. Actually, this topic is quite close to my heart, I would say. What I would definitely recommend is to reach out to support groups. So there are a lot of meetups, and despite now Corona, the meetups are still happening, and groups on Facebook and whatnot. For example, Women in Product is one of them, to find out that there are a lot of women out there probably struggling with similar challenges, and they are eager to talk to you and meet, and it's super easy to find those meetings. And I think now, actually, with Corona, you know, you can join a women in product, women leadership meetup anywhere in the world. So that's the cool thing about it.
We've got the Prod MBA Women's Circle as well, which we set up as a response.
Fantastic.
As well.
Yeah, so this is something I did in the past. Another thing is try to find mentors. And I think it's also becoming increasingly easy. There are quite a few platforms where you can try to find mentors, and I would suggest having both men and female mentors. Like, of course, it's great to have experienced women, but also I sometimes find it very interesting to talk to men and see, you know, how they think about different things. And there's a platform that I'm a part of called Plateau, but there are many more, and also, like, I think country-specific ones. And I think more and more companies are actually investing in mentorship programs within their companies. Yeah. This is something we have at Zalando. I heard there is something like this, for example, here in Berlin in TikTok. So this is also happening, and I think more and more, and it's great. So, and also you don't have to do it, you know, officially. You can just reach out to people and ask. And from my experience, usually people, even very busy people, would find time to speak to you. Maybe, you know, not on weekly basis, but once a month, once a quarter. And then you can have quite a lot of these people you talk to. And I think these exchanges are really invaluable.
Yeah, definitely.
And for me, I mean, what helped me for sure was I got into public speaking, especially last year. This was my like highlight year. I did a lot of conferences. Yeah. Traveled a little bit, good times when I could travel still. And I'm not a natural born public speaker. I would say I should usually get quite nervous before I have to speak publicly in front of a lot of people. Yeah. And this somehow helped me. I'm not a big fan of the term getting out of the comfort zone, but I think that was actually me getting out of my comfort zone and doing those talks. And I started small. I started at Zalando with, colleagues, then a product community at Zalando. And I got invited to a meetup. Then I got invited to a small conference and bigger. And then at some point I went to Singapore to speak.
Oh, wow.
I would never probably, yes, imagine that a few years back, because I was really not a fan of doing this. I was always super, super nervous.
Yeah.
And doing this actually gave me confidence. Like, yes, maybe I'm not a natural born speaker, but with a bit of practice in doing that, I can actually do it and do it confidently.
Yeah.
And also this helped me a lot to meet people, because this is what you do at conferences. You network and you speak to people and meet them. And I met a lot of fantastic women. And I also saw on stage a lot of inspiring women that I could also approach later on. And this also motivated me further. So I would say these are just a few things you can do. But in general, I would say for women, go for it. There is nothing wrong with being ambitious.
Yeah.
And I read actually earlier today when thinking about our conversation that according to Harvard Business Review, women score higher than men in most leadership skills evaluations.
I saw that this
keep
week.
it in mind.
I screenshotted that and I've bookmarked that article as well. No, I think that's excellent advice. I mean, mentorship. I think also on mentorship, just reaching out to people. I think, as you said, I've never had somebody turn around and go, fuck off. You don't have time.
Yes.
People are really open. They're more than happy to help. Even people that are really, you think, oh my God, out of your
worst case, it can happen. They are just too busy and they will say no. Now you can always reach another time.
Don't respond. Exactly. And I think second one that I think great is that I think it's that Greek term of, I think it's eustress, where it's you're not stressed in terms of panicky and anxious, but it's like getting you to push yourself. I think that's the space where you really grow. I mean, that's a principle that we at the Product MBA really, it's why we get people to actually build their own product, because I think when you're in that situation where you're really sort of uncomfortable, that's where you're going to grow most. And the more repetition you get in that space, the more stress you're experiencing, I think the faster you develop essentially and grow.
Yeah, I think definitely it's a matter of practice, but also I think it's a matter of understanding your values and understanding what's important to you and sticking to them. I don't think women should emulate men in any way. No. Just, try to be yourself, understand what's important, where do you want to grow, and go for it.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice at the end as well. Like really being clear on your principles, sticking to them, using that as your guiding framework. Marta, it's been a pleasure. Really, really interesting conversation. I've learned a lot. I've been taking a load of notes as well.
Cool.
I will re-listen to this as well. Is there anywhere you want people to follow you? Anywhere you write or public speaking, for example?
Well, I haven't been doing that much of public speaking this year, unfortunately. No, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Oh. I'm also a mentor on the Plateau platform, but I think the easiest, if someone wants to get in touch, would be to catch me on LinkedIn.
Sure. And what I'll do is I'll add your LinkedIn URL to the email we're sending out as part of this series. Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for the time. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon.